one item. The motion is for the report to be received and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Would someone like to move the motion? Oh, Councillor, it's tough to look this. Normally I don't have to turn. Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Humphreys, any comments or questions? Seeing none. Mr. Clerk, call the vote, record a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record vote for the only item of council reporting out of closed session. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Humphreys?
Yes.
Councillor Humphreys votes yes. Councillor Gartner is absent. Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland votes yes. Councillor Gallo? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Kim?
Yes.
And Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that. Councillor Kim, second. Councillor Gilliland, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Kim, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with that, we'll call this general committee meeting to order. The time is 7:03 p.m. on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022, and we'll call this committee meeting to order. We'd like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, whose presence here continues to this day. Aurora is part of the tree lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties of First Nations. Sorry, I got something in my throat. We acknowledge and thank them for sharing this land with us. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and of how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? That passes. Any declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? None. We have no community presentations and we have no delegations this evening and no consent agendas. So we have a motion to receive the advisory committee meeting minutes, items 8.1 to 8.3. Councillor Gallo and Councillor Gilliland, all in favor? Opposed? And that carries. So we'll move on to item 9.1. Continued advancement of the second generation asset management plan. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Gilliland, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Comments or questions, please? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. This is a really great initiative. I'm really happy to see that we're applying for these grants through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Within the grants that we have, I know some of it's going towards, I guess, some of the climate adaptation, I believe, of some sorts. Is there any of this that would be eligible for natural capital assets at all, or is that something that's separate?
Sorry, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is for our second generation asset management plan for working on the next phase of that. Our asset management plan does not at this time consider natural assets, but in establishing the measures for our various assets, climate change would be an impact on how those measures are monitored over time.
Thank you. And I think that's actually, it's really great. And I'm glad that we're taking advantage of that. I know we had chatted about the MAMP program and the funding that they have. The natural capital assets is something that I hopefully would like to include. And I'm only asking this tonight through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. I know that the funding does I guess, have a timeline of, I believe, this October 2022 in order to qualify the application for funding. Are we maxed out on the funding and what we can receive? Should we be looking at natural capital assets now, or is this something that the federal government intends on releasing more access to funds for this? Since I do know this is a hot topic for them.
Mr. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we have actually already proceeded with applying for the grant. So the grant process is underway. If we were to go ahead and add the additional natural capital assets, that would be a much larger undertaking and would require significant more investment. What we are trying to do right now is make sure that we are meeting our requirements under legislation for the advancement of the asset management plans to put the service levels in place and the service measures.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know you guys are doing quite a lot of work. I'll probably do some more work on the natural capital assets, and hopefully there's some additional funding that will come out for that, since I know it is a pretty big topic of discussion. But I appreciate that you guys are on the ball and making sure that if there are grants available, you're trying to grab that and be organized, because I know some municipalities are having difficulty meeting that deadline. So thank you for being on the ball.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Any other questions or comments? If there are none, I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Item 9.2, Neighborhood Park on Hartwell, funding increase. Can I have a mover on that, please? Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Gilliland. Comments or questions? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering whether staff had, because of the significant increase, $923,000 to bring a total of 2.4 million. Did staff ever consider scaling down the project to try to fit it into the budget?
Mr. Downey.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the answer to that is yes. This project has been going on for 4 years. So we came to council, I think, 3 times with this park. The original budget was set in 2018. We then came in with a concept. Council endorsed it. They asked us to go back and meet with the community, which we did. Came back with another facility fit as well as an adjusted budget. When we went into tender, the prices came in much higher than we had anticipated. But we had made adjustments to the budget as our facility fit had changed, but we did not anticipate increases like this.
Councillor Gallo.
So through you, Mr. Chair, you made me recall the history, and I think I was the one who said, go and talk to the community. I guess my question is, once we knew what the new landscape and price were at that point, did we say, let's take a little bit of time and see if we can scale down this project because of the significant increases in cost because of the construction industry today?
Mr. Downey.
So through you, Mr. Chair, my recollection, I just want to maybe go back to the reports. My recollection is we've already come to council once and asked for more money. I think this is the second time we've come to council asking for more money. So to answer your first question, we did look at it. We thought we had enough when we went into tender. We would not have called the tender if we thought that we were going to be that far off the mark. But with the new components that have been put in there, 2 of them that we would not normally put into a park would be the community gardens. So we did our best guess on what that was going to be, and we've identified that what the individual cost of that is. And council also asked us to look at a natural playground, and that was substantially more than would be in a traditional playground, but we didn't think it was going to be that much more. So it did come as a bit of a surprise to us that the cost had come in so high, but at the same time, this is something that we were trying to address, not only the needs of the community, but the needs of council as well. And as I said, if we had known that the costs were going to be this high, we would have come to you with a increased budget or an increased scope prior to going to tender.
Councillor Gallo?
Um, I guess, you know, where we are now, I feel like, you know, I want to move forward with this project, but I'm torn because I'm trying to think in my mind, do we pause? You know what happens when we pause generally? On normal conditions, things tend to go up. Do we say to staff, okay, this is the new reality. Maybe we should take a look at the aspects of the park and see whether some can be modified to try to be a little more budget sensitive. And maybe that's the direction, at least that's where I'm kind of heading. Or do we bite the bullet and just do it? And it's such a moving target because we all know, never mind month to month, day to day, prices are changing, not necessarily in our favor. And who could possibly predict whether or not, you know, things level off and, you know, 6-8 months, a year from now, whatever the timing is, we don't see these you know, some would call them ridiculous prices. Justified, you know, it's all over the board. Anyone who's doing business anywhere would realize this. So I'm on the fence in terms of, do we bite the bullet and do this? Do we pause? Do we rescope it to be a little more budget sensitive? So those are my initial comments. I'd love to hear what others feel.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Gill, sorry, I think Councillor Thompson is our first. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. You know, I share the concerns that Councillor Gallo sort of echoed and the thoughts as well that, you know, the report indicates that, you know, the tender prices were 60% higher than the consultants had originally estimated for the park construction. And while I would agree that if you were to delay moving forward with this project for a short period of time, costs increase, and we've seen that with everything we've ever done. But, you know, would it, you know, blunt or offset some of that increase that we're seeing as a result of not just, you know, supply issues and inflation, but I think also just from a supply and demand perspective, there's a huge push on a variety of projects all across the board, and that's what's driving up some costs as well. And perhaps if you were to delay it, while the cost may go up a little bit, you know, that premium that's being associated with the project right now of nearly $1 million, certainly I wouldn't expect it to go up that much, and there might be some savings in delaying this project. But again, nobody has a crystal ball, and you can't say that for any degree of certainty. But at the same time, I also agree with the comments about, you know, perhaps looking at making some alterations or changes to the overall design to make it a little bit more price conscious. You know, I think perhaps even revisit some of the other ideas or components we've talked about in the past that, you know, might be a little bit more reasonable in terms of pricing, so that, you know, it does come more in line with what was the anticipated budget previously set. So I guess my question through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, in terms of, you know, getting in and building the park and everything, you know, what's sort of the, I guess, the deadline or the timelines? If council were to delay this decision, at what point would it not be able to get into the ground this year, and it would be part of a next year process?
Mr. Downey.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if council was interested in having, or Mr. Chair, I apologize. If council was interested in having this park completed this year, we would need to commence very soon. Certainly in the month of June, we would like to be able to start break ground and start moving forward. I can't, until we actually execute the contract, I really don't know what kind of schedule the contractor would give us. As many of you are aware, we have supply issues, and sometimes the supply issues extend past what we would think is a normal construction period. So I wouldn't be able to say with certainty that we would be able to complete it this year, even if we started it in June, based on the supply issues. And so I wouldn't be able to be certain with regards to a completion date until I actually had the contract executed and the contractor presenting a schedule. We are presently very close to the date where we need to make a decision with regards to this contract. We've asked for an extension on the price, but extensions on prices these days is also not something with certainty because of the inflationary pressures that many contractors are feeling. They aren't willing to hold their prices much longer than they need to within the tender period.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Thompson.
Thank you. Perhaps I'll follow offline with you and have some more discussions along this lines. But I think since the decision doesn't need to be made until the end of this month at council, but I'm leaning towards a similar perspective to Councillor Gallo in that perhaps to not proceed with this tender, refer it back to staff, make further adjustments to the design and or perhaps wait until the pricing may be a little bit better before proceeding. Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you very much. Just some quick comments. Looking at the report and reading what's in it, I think I should have been a consultant because they certainly got away with some estimations there off the mark, considering a typical playground is 200 to 250 in Aurora, but then they estimated 123. So maybe we got to start looking at what consultants that we're hiring. So I'll just leave it at there. As far as the playground is concerned, through Mr. Chair to Mr. Downey, what is the life cycle of this playground in comparison to a traditional playground?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the play value, I believe, is probably a little bit longer than a traditional playground. I can't tell you how much longer. All depends on the amount of activity going on in particular in that particular piece. In fact, there may be components that wear out earlier than other components. So the interesting thing about this playground is, it's basically a natural playground. It's something that the council has been asking us for. We're using Robina or black locust wood, and unfortunately, it's expensive. It's difficult to come by, but it does have a longer lifespan than you're going to have in a normal playground. So there are some components that are going to wear out earlier, but generally, this is going to last longer. It could last as much as twice as long, but we've had playgrounds in the ground in Aurora, traditional playgrounds that have been in the ground for 20 years and they're still good. We've had some in the ground that have been here 10 years and we need to replace them. So it really has a lot to do with the amount of activity going on that particular piece of playground equipment.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. And it was important to ask that question because I know we are, going through procurement right now and investigating life cycle as far as the things that we're investing in. Might not always be the less expensive one, but maybe more of a median to get a little bit more value for our money. And looking at the playground structure right now, it's about, a $340,000 difference. So when we talk about what we're scaling back, I think a band shell is something that we've always wanted there. I don't know how much scaling back we do on that. The community gardens, well, if anything, I believe that, with the rising food costs and the community gardens is a really big want. I really think it does serve a real great need in the community to be able to participate in a spot to grow their own vegetables. So I'm just trying to understand where we would scale back other than the actual playground. So if it all comes down to scaling back for $340,000. And it's like, well, do you want the natural playground or do you not? And then we talk about the life cycle of it. So there's so many different things that we could speak to as to why we would want one playground over the other. I know at FCM in 2019, this was a really large component and very trending, and a lot of municipalities really wanted to be able to, hop on that bandwagon to bring this natural aspect for creativity for the kids and young minds. So I guess that's a decision council have to make around the table, whether or not they want the traditional playground or invest in the natural and that creativity and that mindset. And is it worth it? I feel this community has waited a long time for a park there. And I think we need to make up our mind, as the old saying goes, blank or get off the pot. So hopefully between now and council next week, maybe we'll get some more clarity on it. It's unfortunate it's come to this, but again, like I said, maybe I should be a consultant in my next career. But I would like to see this park go forward because I think it is a great need and it serves so many different components. And I do love the accessibility of it as well. I did ask staff for an indication of where the community gardens were. And it was indicated there was various heights of the raised beds. So in the passageway as well. So it allowed people with different disabilities and accessibilities to access the community gardens. So I do think there's a lot of benefit to what's been provided here. And there is a lot of cost analysis of if we were to scale down on a particular component. So I appreciate that that information's in there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The comments here from staff in terms of this being fully funded by parks, cash in lieu for parks, as well as having a very healthy reserve and continuously being a healthy reserve. And understanding it's a bit shocking to see a price increase of what we're asking tonight. But when I look at the project and I see how long we've been waiting for this to happen, to Councillor Gilliland's point, the community garden is a huge aspect of I think what neighborhoods would really love to see in a designated area like this. It's such an exciting plan. I don't want to see scale back here. I think we have to do what we need to do for optimal living for our residents. They deserve it. It's been a long time coming. And, if I saw that there was a problem with budgeting, if I saw that we were going to be hurting in the reserves, if I saw an indication in the report that, we're going to have to find, somewhere else to get money to pay for this, I would be concerned. But again, it says that should council approve the proposed funding of this project, the reserves balance is projected to remain healthy over the next 10 years, concluding the period of a $14,900,000 reserve. So, we're in good shape here. We're in a healthy state, unless I'm reading this incorrectly. If someone would just confirm that for me, Mr. Chair, if we're still looking good from our reserves and capital funding for this, if that's agree with you to Mr. Downey, just to confirm that the funding is all.
Yeah, I think our treasurer will be happy to
Ms.
respond to that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, that reserve, the cash in the parkland is in a really healthy position. And we do have the funds to be able to pay for the increase in the full cost of this project from there.
Perfect, thank you. So hearing that, this is an incredible investment. It's going in the right direction. I think staff have put a lot of effort into this. It's a bit shocking. You see something coming from us from a different angle. And to Councillor Gallo's point, who would have known that these prices were going to change so much over the last couple of years? I would like to see this moving forward. I think I've got everything I need here to make that decision. So I hope that we can have some time to think about it. If we need more information till our next meetings, to the end of the month, the next council meeting, perfect. But I would love to see this come to fruition and see it come forward for our residents. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Humphries. Anyone else for comments or questions? I'm not big on delaying because, as it's been stated before this evening, that any delays usually results in higher costs. Not always, but quite often. Mr. Downey, the table on page 3, it speaks to the percentage increase in the various products that goes into construction, and they range anywhere from 13% to as high as 81% for communication and electrical wire. The total increase of this project was stated at approximately 60%, and when I whether you be equal weighted or non-equal weighted average of these figures, it can't possibly add up to 60%. So can you explain how the 60% increase came about when all the input costs are well below 60%?
So to you, Mr. Chair, we provided the table in number on page 3 to give you some indication of what kind of increases we're looking at while this was out to tender. And as you can see, they were substantial. I can't give you a definitive answer because it's a public bidding process of why we were so far off the mark. We generally are not. In fact, very few projects are this far off the mark. But this has been a bit of a challenge with regards to trying to deal with this increase, and it seems to be the marketplace at this point. And so we provided the table just to give you some idea what we were looking at, but why we have an increase so substantial in this particular park, I cannot give you the answer to that.
Thank you. Ms. Rachel Van Kessel?
To you, Mr. Chair. So we're seeing this fairly common among a number of procurements, not just the park procurement that is sitting with Mr. Downey. We're seeing prices that are much higher than expected across a lot of different commodities. So it's just the nature of the market that we're seeing right now. So this is not an uncommon occurrence at this time.
Thank you. And I accept that on average, the input costs since we initiated this conversation at the park is up 30%, but I'm accruing the other 30% variances due to the consultants' estimates were not on the mark. So that's what I'm accruing it to. Mr. Downey, between now and council at the end of the month, is that sufficient time for you and the team to look at other alternatives, as was stated by my fellow colleagues, in terms of, can we still continue with an alternative arrangement, or is that insufficient time? Sure.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize. We just want to make sure we were on the same page here. With regards to the contract, we would have to ensure that we were, first of all, going to award the contract to the contractor, and then we could, after we had executed the contract, perhaps negotiate something. But we are not able to negotiate prior to the execution of the contract.
So I don't think we're asking staff to negotiate with the contractor in terms of the price on the set items, but between now and council, can we reconsider some of the set items and say, you know what, instead of having item A, we're going to do without item A, or we're going to do a different version of item A that might cost less? Is that something that staff can consider and come back to by the end of the month?
So to you, Mr. Chair, we have provided a breakout of some of the major components within the park. And if council was looking at perhaps eliminating some aspects of it, such as the community gardens, you're probably looking at a $200,000 savings. If you're looking at eliminating the playground and then preparing the area for the playground and then putting in a traditional playground, you're probably saving maybe $200,000, $300,000. So it's one of the purposes of putting table one into this. So if council had a desire or give us in some indication of things that they would be comfortable with us removing, I'm more than happy to take a look at that once we have a contract and we can negotiate those things out of the contract. But it's really council's prerogative to say, listen, we don't want to, let's phase in this or that component of the park. We are recommending that we do it because I think at some point we will be completing this park. And at some point it's going to cost us more now, or going to cost us more then than it's going to cost us now. And unless council is uncomfortable with a component of the park that we're putting in right now, I would recommend that we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. I guess, I'm fine with endorsing the staff recommendation for now, and all of us in council will have a couple of weeks to decide if we want to go that route and pick and choose what we think might be the final park outcome. But we have a couple of weeks for council to have second thoughts then. Any other questions or comments on this item? If not, Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just in terms of funding, I think it's important that we're very, very clear. Maybe my first question is, this originally, or a portion of it, 1.3 million, was funded by the Parks and Recreation DCs. How come we are now deciding to change that and fund it from cash in lieu of parkland? Why was it a good idea when we started and it's no longer a good idea? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Wainwright Van Castle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I can't speak to why it was done before because I wasn't here at that time. But when we were looking at this project and we were looking at the service levels under our development charges and what we have for within our current bylaw versus what we also have identified as post-period benefits, we are already fairly heavily serviced in this particular area for parks. So we were looking at the options where we can balance out the funding appropriately and not overextend on our development charges. And cash in lieu parkland is an option for this because it's an improvement for town-owned land. So we can actually use that type of funding to pay for this. A lot of what's in this does potentially increase service levels, and development charges are not intended for the increase of service levels.
Councillor Gallo.
So originally, as was mentioned, it was part of Parks Recreation DCs that we all know, or all should know, has a significant deficit of 14.6 million. And removing 1.3 million will, I guess, help that account and still have a deficit of $13.1 million and utilize that 1.3 million from cash in lieu of parkland. I guess my question was, why did we originally put it under the DC? Would it affect if we remove that from the Parks and Rec DC? Does it now remove our ability to include that, or does it affect our next development charges bylaw by removing that from that fund? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Wainwright Van Castle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So by removing it from that fund, it would reduce the overall amount that we have as the reserve adjustments. The reserve adjustment indicates a deficit that would be in the reserve at the starting period. By also funding it as a service enhancement, it would increase our service levels in the future. So it would enable us to collect DCs on other future parks similar in this nature if we decide to build them within the town. One of the other things it does is it alleviates some of the pressure on that Parks and Recreation DC reserve and enables us to do some other projects that we have in the 10-year plan. And I'm sure some of those other projects are going to be seeing price increases and other challenges, but they would not be eligible for funding under the cash in lieu parkland.
Councillor Gallo.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, the same token would be that we're reducing the cash in lieu of parkland, which we wouldn't have those funds for projects that we may have used those funds. I guess it works both ways. I'm still on the fence, and I don't know whether through you to Mr. Downey, whether there's even an option to have this park kind of in phases, as opposed to, because I like the design and I like the community park, and I was a big proponent of that. And I like the concept of the new playground idea. But the increase doesn't sit well with me, and I'm having a real tough time justifying it. And I'm trying to figure out a way to accomplish this and not having that massive impact and increase in its cost. So through you to Mr. Downey, is there a way of phasing this in within, whatever, two-year span or something like that?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes is the quick answer. Yes, there's always a possibility of phasing it. It would require us to go back, redesign, so that we had some indication of what work we wanted to do initially. We would then retender because this was a tender for the completion of the project. So we would, so whatever components we decide to put into phase two would then be called in a phase two contract. We would more than likely come back in 2023 with a request for additional funding for the park. Because as you know, we need additional funding for the park. So we would make a request in the 2023 capital budget for the additional funding of $1 million or whatever funding we felt was going to be required. And we could complete the park more than likely in 2023, as opposed to completing it in 2022. The design wouldn't change. The cash flow and the funding model would change in that we would do it in two parts as opposed to one large part.
Councillor Gallo.
So just to be clear to me, we could parse it off, still construct whichever section we ended up deciding to do in the summer, fall of this year, and then complete it in 2023.
Mr. Downey.
I apologize.
I'm trying to make sure I understood. Could we do a portion? Let's say we decided to do it in phases. Could we actually construct phase one, summer, fall, and then phase two, 2023?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, we could. It would mean that we would have to abandon this contract, redesign the park so that we identified only the work that we wanted to have done in phase one, make sure that it was well within the budget of $1.5 million, which is what we have right now, and complete that work this year. We still would need additional funding to complete the rest of the park. We would make that request in 2023 capital budget. If that was approved, we would call a tender for that additional $1 million and complete the park in 2023. So yes, it could be done, but as they say, it would now take two tenders, a slight redesign, and another budget submission.
Mr. Gallo.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I'm just trying to figure out how to get this done and not just, and I'm not suggesting anybody's doing this, but just willy-nilly spend money, $1 million more than what we anticipated without putting some thought to it and seeing if there's other avenues to accomplish the same thing and not have that massive impact. That's what I'm trying to maybe I should be doing beforehand, not publicly, but the directors are here and I'm asking questions, and I value everyone else's opinion. So I'll leave it at that. I can't support what's before me without knowing whether or not there are other options. But between now and council, maybe we can figure that out.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Just hearing the comments around the table and, obviously hearing what everybody's considering. I still look at the report and have read kind of everything there with our options, understanding I don't really know what I would leave out. I don't know what I would phase in. I think Councillor Humphreys had a motion in for food security. There's a huge food supply chain issue going on right now. And I think one of the things that people are talking about is if you don't have enough room to grow your own food in your own backyard, perhaps ask your neighbor. This community garden, I think, is something that's well overdue. I don't know, Councillor Humphreys, when you actually put that motion in, but I think it's a while ago now. So if I were to scale back and want to wait, I don't think I'd want to wait on that either. So then we talk about, okay, now we're going to wait on the playground. Well, kids are at home. People are working from home more. They want their kids to be outside playing. I don't know if I necessarily want to be holding up a park either. So it's a lot to think about between now and the next couple of weeks, if that is the will of council. Looking at the report, yeah, I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed that the cost estimate was very down, up to 60% based on the consultant combined with inflation. Yeah, it really is really too bad. But I don't really see much benefit for the community in general waiting this out and splitting it up. I foresee there's going to be more costs, especially if you're going to cancel one contract, retender, redesign. Landscape designs are very expensive. Just piecemealing and helter-skeltering. And I maybe I'm wrong, but between now and a couple of weeks, maybe there'll be a different thing that's brought forward. But right now, I'm okay with what's been presented today. It's an unfortunate the price and what it's changed, but I think the benefit to the community and what the community will get out of this particular park, which is completely unique from any other park that we have, by the way, I think it'll be extremely beneficial. So as it stands, I'll be in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Mayor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, if we did split it up, I'm just curious. I like the idea, but I just also want to know, there's no guarantee that the funds would be the same, would they? I mean, we just finished having a discussion about the fact that when you pause and you wait and you go back out, we've seen it time and time again where the price basically increases the longer that we wait. So realistically, there would be no guarantee that if we split up the park into 2 phases, redesigned it, went back out and did the first phase under the first amount, that the second phase, when it comes back, that the price wouldn't be higher. We have no guarantee on that the price would be exactly the same as it is before us today. Is that correct? Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would dare say it's going to be more. You're going to be paying more next year than you're paying this year. There's no doubt about it. So I certainly understand council's issue here, but the money you save today, you're going to be spending plus in future years.
Mayor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. I think, as was mentioned around the table, I don't think any of us are happy with the price increase, but we've seen the inflation. We've seen what's been going on, not only just in the GTA, but in Canada and actually across the world. We've seen prices going up. We've seen labor shortages. So we've seen all of that, and we've seen what happens when you pause on projects that are the right things to do for our community. We've seen prices skyrocket, and if we don't lock in, and if we don't do it because if we don't think it's the right thing to do, then we shouldn't do it. If the price has gone up, let's not do it. But if we think it's the right thing to do, and we think it's going to benefit our community to have this park there, as much as I think we all hate the fact that the price has increased, if we delay it, it's just going to be more. And how does that benefit our community? It just costs the taxpayers even more money by waiting, because once again, we don't want to make a decision.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else for a second try? No further comments. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Yeah, that passes. Item 9.3, 2021 annual report to the community. Someone like to move that, please? Councilor Humphreys, Councilor Gilman. Questions or comments? Councilor Gilman?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for a great report. Very clear, very exciting. Thank you for all the hard work. I've asked for this PDF separate because I think it's a great thing to have and share with the community as much as you can. Take a read if you haven't had a chance, but there's a lot of great things that have happened. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Gillen. Anyone else? Mayor Maracus?
Thank you, Chair. And I'm just gonna, thank our CAO, all of staff for putting this together. And I think that what it speaks volumes to is the amount of things that we've done as a town, as council, throughout this year. And it hasn't been an easy year. It hasn't been an easy 2 years. But when you read through this document and you see all the things that have been going on in the town, it's quite impressive. So thank you. Thank you to staff for putting this together. And thank you to everyone from council to staff for doing the work that they've done over the last year.
Councilor Humphreys?
Thank you to you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to echo comments from Mr. Mayor and Councilor Gillen that it's pretty proud to see at a time when, basically the world stopped for quite a period of time, slowly began to move forward, that it seems like the town of Aurora hasn't had any stop in that at all. So I want to thank you very much. I mean, it's pretty incredible when you hear hundreds of pieces of communication issued, nearly 96,000 unique views at aurora.ca COVID-19. Like that's pretty incredible. So I just want to thank you, staff. It's not easy. What you've gone through, you have to learn to work differently, remotely. And yet there was a way to adhere to that and perform and continue to do so. So thank you so much. Great stuff.
Anyone else? Councilor Thompson?
Thank you. Certainly I echo the comments that, it's great that we produce this annual report every year, and kudos to staff for the job that they did. However, just the one comment, and I made this comment in the past, is that, we like to include a lot of different numbers in there to show, various factors and metrics. But, at the same time, I think it's important to try and provide some context so there's an understanding around those numbers. For example, we might say that, there's, X number of hits on our website, but we don't really know in terms of its context, whether that's good, bad, in terms of comparison with other municipalities, or whether it's really serving the purpose that we want in terms of the residents getting the information they need in a quick and accessible manner. We talk about our social media stats and how our numbers are up slightly from 2020. But again, there's no real context to be able to say, is this good, bad, or not? And so, again, I think we should always strive to provide, additional information around that, so that when people pick it up and they say, okay, Facebook's up by 585 from 2020, what does that really mean? And whether that's contained within this report or there is some sort of additional piece along it in the report to give it some more context, I think that information is valuable to the public to get a better understanding of what do all of these numbers really mean. I'm not sure if Carly would like to comment.
Ms. Smith?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Thompson. I think that's great feedback. And we will look at incorporating some more storytelling in our report for next year.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, any more comments?
Thank you. And I apologize for not referencing Ms. Smith by her full name. I guess I'm used to just calling my own daughter Carly. I just sort of skipped that. But again, appreciate it. And as always, thank you for the work you did.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll also reiterate, as everyone else did, that this was an excellent job, and thank you, Ms. Smith and staff for creating this. The only thing that stuck out for me was the annual tax increase for a house assessed at 800,000, and I haven't seen a house for 800,000 in the last year, so maybe we can move that number up to make it more realistic. With that, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you. Item 9.4, application for minor site plan approval, 306 St. John's Side Road, St. Anne's School. Someone move that, please. Mayor Marakis, Councillor Humphreys, comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Ramuno. Just a quick question. I note that the recommendation really is just to receive for information. So I guess perhaps he could provide some context as why this report is before us without any real information other than just an update on where things are.
Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly, through you, Chair Kim. As council is aware, council approved the zoning bylaw for the repurposing of the private residence to a institutional use back in February. My understanding through some of the discussions at this table was that council wanted to see the site plan before staff approved it. This is one of those minor site plan applications that has been delegated to staff. So this is really just for council's information that staff have had the site plan application since about February. We've completed our review for the repurposing of the private residence into a school. There's an additional portable and playing field. That's the essentially what the site plan comprises of. And again, it's really just here to advise council that following the zoning bylaw approval by council, staff are ready to issue the approval of the minor site plan application.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gallo.
That was my question as well. It just seemed odd. Not typically do we get this type of thing just to receive. So I got the answer. Thank you.
Anyone else? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. And our final item, train whistle cessation program assessment update. Can someone move that, please? Councillor Thompson. Seconder, Councillor Gilliland. Questions or comments? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. Once again, I'm just a little disappointed that on page 4 of the report, I know that when I had asked for a comparator, I was very specific in reaching out to Markham and kind of getting a comparator as to, what did they do in order to have that collaboration to be so successful and what has changed, and especially with the liability and such. But yet we haven't received any feedback still. Second report in the last couple months. I guess, when did I ask for this? In December last year. So any clarity as to why we aren't able to get any feedback from Markham?
Mr. Ramuno or Ms. Cesario?
Through your Chair Kim, I may defer this to our solicitor, or our manager of engineering, Anka, is also with us this evening.
Ms. Anka?
Good evening. Through you, Mr. Chair, we had a meeting with City of Markham yesterday. I will discuss everything that needs to be done in terms of design and implementation of the project. The meeting we had with City of Markham was with the project manager in charge of implementing the 16 crossings and anti-whistling at the 16 crossings that Markham has. I cannot say anything about liability, risk, cost of liability. We asked these questions, but we met with professional engineers and they said that these questions should be discussed with their legal division. So any questions regarding to, design implementation, we know what we have to do. If council decides to implement the anti-whistling, we know how to proceed with safety assessment, design, and peer review, and then implementing the project on site. Anything related to regarding risk and liability, I'm not able to answer.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And I look forward to hearing more how Markham will collaborate with you on the engineering and design of everything. So I think it's an important, component in networking to have, so we can see what the successes are and we know it can be successful. So there is opportunity. As far as like insurance, obviously through you to Mr. Serio, insurance, that's definitely a big thing, but it does exist for unprecedented circumstances, much like car insurance and life insurance. And by putting all these safety measures in place, I would assume that, it would contribute to the insurance rate as such, just like a car. Some cars cost more insurance than others just based on the safety standards and the stars rewards that it's gotten. And your rates could vary. I don't know if we've made that work to make a decision on what that premium would look like once these safety measures are all in place. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Serio, have you been able to find any information about that regard?
Ms. Mahale.
Doesn't matter.
Ms. Mahale.
No, it's
Mr. Serio.
sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. We have spoken to our insurer, and as the report says, at this time, the premiums would not go up. It's not if we put the measures in place that the premium will go up, is if it's more if there's a catastrophic incident that occurs, and that will affect the insurance program that may then have our insurance premiums and our deductibles increase substantially.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. And I guess at some point you would need to know what those cost risk benefits would be, just much like if, you happen to be in a car accident or such, and you're an 18-year-old male, that you risk that your insurance rates are going to go up, and surely must be able to have some sort of estimate of some sorts.
Mr. Serio.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, that's not something that they could provide with us right now. What insurance companies do is first they look at the market, whether it's a hard market or a soft market, but in addition, they look at your loss reports or your loss history. So to date, we've had a very good loss history. So our premiums have been at an acceptable rate, as have our deductibles. Like I said, if there's something that happens, if there's an incident that impacts our loss history, and then that will then dictate what the premiums are. Because not many municipalities have whistle cessation, or because there hasn't really been an incident to date that we are aware of that went through the courts, the insurance program, the insurance companies haven't been really giving us any details as to what the increase could be, because that's something that's a future event that they wouldn't even be able to dictate right now anyway.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I guess fair enough. I guess it's good to know that Markham has been successful and they haven't had any court proceedings based on that because the safety measures are in place. I do understand that there's a lot of collaboration between the region, the municipality, and Transport Canada, and there's strict safety precautions put in place to avoid it at all costs between the maze barriers and arms and all sorts of things. So it's good to know that so far this is working. More and more people are finding work-life balance at home. They're working from home, working out of their houses. I think times have changed a lot, and with these 15-minute trains going by constantly, and it's going to increase up further north, it's something we really need to look at and consider. I do support the fact that we are looking at the regional roads, and we'll get some regional support, especially on St. John Side Road. But residents deserve that quality of life component. I mean, I couldn't imagine backing on that train, listening to a horn every 15 minutes of the day. Like I think it would just drive everybody to lunacy, to be quite honest. So, what's that balance? What is that balance? And is that risk, with the insurance and the premium and all these safety measures we put in place, is that quality of life for the greater good of the entire public worth, that everyday sanity of not having to hear these 15-minute horns all day long? I think it's definitely something we need to question. I do want to see more information on Center Street. I don't know why we're not talking about it, other than the fact that maybe it could be related to the Metrolinx project. So through you, Mr. Chair, to, I guess, Mr. Ramuno, maybe. I understand there will be that grade separation at Wellington, and we're not looking at that because of the grade separation at Wellington. And so it would make no sense to be making this huge investment or partnership with the region at this time. However, does that mean that there's going to be some possible changes at the Center Street crossing as well? So there's no sense in spending all this money if, 3 years from now, they're ripping it all up to kind of, redo it because of a grade separation there.
Mr. Ramuno?
So your Councillor, Chair Kim, with respect to Center Street, based on the information that we're getting from Metrolinx, I mean, that grade separation work is to be completed by the end of 2025. And I think the plans, and I'll have to confirm this and advise council, but the plans for Center Street, there may no longer be a crossing there. Center Street may be closed at both ends. So that would essentially solve the problem about the pedestrian gates, et cetera, at that Center Street grade separated crossing.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I appreciate that because that does change things quite a bit. So I appreciate that that is a good reason why we shouldn't probably be investing in Center Street right now. Otherwise, I definitely would be advocating for that hard now. In the meantime, or in the interim, because I don't know when these, if it's going to close or not, but Wellington, I mean, is that something we're going to broach once they complete the grade separation about the crossing, or is the crossings all going to be underneath? It will be a moot point. So they won't need to honk the horns at that crossing because of the grade separation. So it'll be moot.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Chair Kim. So once the grade separation work is done and the underpass is completed along Wellington, there won't be a level crossing. There'd be no need to, I would think, to use the whistle. With respect to Center Street, again, I'll confirm, and if Ms. Mahail has any information she can interject with respect to Center Street. I'm pretty sure that work with this and the decision with respect to the configuration of Center Street will be made at the same time as a grade separation. And my understanding is that Center Street may be closed to east-west traffic, so that vehicles will not be allowed to cross Center Street once that work is completed.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I appreciate that. It does add some clarity. In the interim, because we do still have a lot of horns, and like I was saying, a lot of people are working from home. It's that work-life balance. And I think I've mentioned this at prior meetings, was there any conversation had with Metrolinx, because Center Street is a stone's throw from Wellington? We're talking a stone's throw. And I think that by their procedure, they have to whistle 4 times each time they cross a street. So essentially, because they're a stone's throw, they're whistling 8 times. And so by the time they finish whistling that 8 times, they're pretty much might as well be at St. John's Side Road by then. So is there any conversation that could be had with Metrolinx to say, narrow that down to 4? Because I think the reason why they have the 4 whistles is so they can ensure that the train has passed from the front and the back for safety reasons. Has that conversation been made, and is it possible?
Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Chair Kim, I'm going to ask Anka to weigh in on this.
Ms. Mahail?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. At each at grade crossings, the horn will sound. So if Aurora decides to have a whistle cessation bylaw, that will stop at the crossings. But between crossings, there will be no change.
Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I'm not so sure that answered my question. I do understand that they have to honk the horn. I believe it's 4 times, and that's the procedure. So what I'm suggesting is that because they honk it 4 times crossing Wellington, and they have to honk it again crossing Center Street, and the idea is that the 4 times, from what I understand, it's so you ensure that There's enough time before the train crosses and after the train has left that crossing to ensure that everybody is herded. But because we're in a very tight, close proximity for one street to the other, it's like a stone's throw. By the time 8 whistles go by, they're literally already at St. John's Side Road, ready to honk the next 4. So it's like you might as well have honked 12 times in a row at that point. So like I was saying, is there a way of having a conversation to where, because this is a unique situation to where they are a stone's throw, to where they would consider maybe reducing the amount of whistles, whether it's 6, whether it's 5, I don't know, but I've been there at the properties up on Birch. I've been up to the properties by St. John's. I've been there listening to these whistles. Sometimes it depends on who's on the horn. Sometimes they're honking it slow and they're waiting for certain seconds. Sometimes it's just a honk, honk, honk. But I do feel for the residents when they have to hear that long, long whistle all the way up to St. John's to start over again for another 4 times. So it's literally 12 in a row. So can that conversation be had? Because this is, I feel, is a unique situation where these streets are very close to one another.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can approach Metrolinx and inquire about this. We asked Markham yesterday if they have a situation like this, and they mentioned that Metrolinx considers changes only at the crossing. They will not consider any changing along the railway or between crossings. But definitely we can discuss and see what Metrolinx has to say about that.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Could I just get confirmation on, so it does say in the report that Markham, we didn't receive any comments from Markham, I would assume specifically regarding how they dealt with liability. Am I clear on that? That's what we didn't receive? That's the crux of our problem here. Is that we did not hear from Markham specifically regarding liability and either them accepting it or the region accepting it or some other body accepting it?
Mr. Serio.
Through you, Mr. Chair. While I did get in touch with the Legal Services Department, the person who had initially acted on this file was no longer there. We did also speak to the insurance people, but what they've told us was confidential, so I'm not able to say what it was. And actually, I'm not even privy to it because my person who talked to the person, I told them not to tell me so I wouldn't accidentally say it in council. But in terms of liability, we never did have that discussion. To us, it's plain and simple. They're willing to take on the risk. That's what it is. Markham Council is willing to take on the risk, given the assessment of their insurance program and of other analysis that they did.
Okay, so it's confirmed York Region isn't taking any liability for whistle sensation. Regional Council is not taking any liability from Markham. They're not accepting any liability for their program.
Mr. Serio.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would suspect that similar to us, they would be assuming liability for regional crossings on regional roads.
Okay, regional ones, but
Yes.
but their municipal ones are their own. We have confirmation that they're accepting liability on those.
Mr. Serio.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't confirm or deny. I don't have
Well,
that.
surely we have access to the region to understand whether or not the region is, there's only 2 parties that are really going to do it. And shouldn't that be public? I mean, shouldn't we know either one way or another who's accepting liability? Obviously, it's very important for us to know, because if they've set a precedence, if they've paved the road for us, and the region is taking liability for the municipal crossings, then we should jump on that bandwagon. Or at least let's get a plain view of what is happening in another municipality who's already gone through this, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't know if anyone, Mr. Mayor, maybe.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Councillor Gallo. Councillor Gallo, as far as I'm aware, nothing has come before regional council approving liability on municipal roads or on municipal crossings. If the region has done it, they've done it without regional council's knowledge. I'll just put it to you that way.
So then I guess there's no point in getting feedback from Markham if we know where they are and we're moving in the same direction. I think if we, sorry, the other issue with town insurance premiums, it says that a loss of $1 million could result in premium increases in the range of 25 to 40% annually. Now, I don't know whether insurance companies distinguish between what it is they're paying if there was an accident on a railway and someone ended up suing the town and we'd have to pay, whether that's any different than, as we all can recall, there was a defamation lawsuit that cost the insurer $800,000 and there was a payout, but let's say $600,000 or $700,000 that they had to pay out didn't cost the town 20, 30 or 40, anywhere near that. So I'd really question whether the validity of that statement, considering our past history with our insurer. So we should really make sure we nail that down to make sure we know what we're being exposed with. In terms of crossings, maybe someone can confirm whether St. John's is considered a regional road and they would accept liability. Is that the case?
Mrs. Serio?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, on regional crossings, they will accept liability.
Okay. And Wellington, they're definitely doing an underpass, so they're accepting that. On an underpass, there wouldn't be any whistles anyway. So really, the only one issue we have is Engelhart, and that we would be liable for. Otherwise, the other two, it makes sense to me to move towards removing the whistles and having the region take liability. Well, one really, St. John's, because I do remember Center Street will be closed, and that makes sense to me. Wellington is an underpass, so they wouldn't blow the whistle there anyway. So it's only really Engelhart that we'd be responsible for. And to me, that makes sense to move forward on that. Now that we've confirmed that Markham is also responsible for their municipal roads in terms of train cessation. So I'm in support of moving forward with this, with the concept that really our responsibility is only Engelhart.
Thank you, Councilor Gallo. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Serio. Mr. Serio, it's always been my opinion that our solicitor really one of the key components of the role is looking after the best interests of the town. And as we've dealt with these issues over the years, I've had opportunities to speak with your predecessors and always really look to them for their professional opinion and or recommendation when it comes to assuming liability. And so if I can put the question to you as well, in your professional opinion, what is your position with the town assuming any liability with respect to this?
Mr. Serio?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't think the town should accept the liability. Maybe it would be helpful if I say what a catastrophic incident could look like. Maybe if I tell you a worst case scenario in terms of what could happen if there isn't a whistle and then the train does hit somebody. So the types of claims that can arise, and this will answer partially Councillor Gallo's question about the increase in the premiums, the 25 to 40%. So if there are claims, there could be personal injury claims from any of the people that are in the vehicle. Say the train hits a vehicle or say it hits a person. There'll be those types of claims. If the person is in the vehicle, if there's a passenger, if the person has passed away, then the dependents could also make a claim or the estate could make a claim. There could be personal injury claims from any of the people who are on the train. And if there's, whiplash and if they get thrown forward, If the incident includes a train derailment, then there's potential property damage claims as a result of the damages to any of the surrounding areas. There could be claims from Metrolinx for economic losses or any other company who happens to use the railway. And this, I know this is a worst case scenario, but this is something that could potentially happen without the whistle blowing, because the person who was on the train, sorry, not the train, the person who's driving on the tracks didn't notice that there was a train. And this could affect our insurance program substantially. If this would be considered a catastrophic loss to our insurance program, and it would increase our deductibles. Like right now, our deductibles are pretty low, in my opinion, and manageable. But if we have claims, then we would potentially have to pay, depending on how many claims we have, deductibles per each claim. And so that would be impacted. And then plus our premiums could be impacted. Again, if it's such a huge catastrophic loss, the 24 to 40%, whatever it says in the report. I hope that helps.
Councillor Thompson,
Thank you, Mr. Sarah.
Councillor Humphreys.
Mr. Chair, just in terms of liabilities and so on, each of our crossings, I believe, has the rails that come down, the safety guardrails. So those come down before the whistle. The whistle, you can hear it. Rails come down a minute before, maybe a minute or two. So if we have the rails that come down, does that not give our insurance a little more protection through, Mr. Chair? Do they know that all our crossings have, I'm sorry, what are they called? The safety rails. I'm sorry. Do you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Zario, are they aware that all our crossings have that, that protection to begin with?
Of course they're aware, but sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. But it doesn't stop people from either walking through before a train's coming. It doesn't have to be a driver. It could be even just somebody walking on the tracks.
Okay.
Councillor Humphreys.
I'm just going to think about a few things. I want to hear the rest. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apology for being late this evening. There are a couple things that we're not talking about. Perhaps the most important one is that under federally, Transport Canada, the onus is on the train conductor to sound the horn if, to clear tracks, or if they can see that an accident would be happening. So, we can talk about this back and forth, but at the end of the day, we need to take that into consideration. The conductor holds the liability. With respect to Markham, my answer from Markham was that should there ever be an accident claim, the city's insurance policy will proceed accordingly. So they're going through their insurance. I don't know what their special parameters are, but I definitely think we should find out. If it has to be a confidential meeting of council, so be it. But Markham has found a way to do this. Barrie has also prohibited horns. I believe it's just in the morning, but they've done it. With respect to liability, we hold liability now. Anybody can look at our crossings at Center and Englehart. They're not safe. So we would be certainly increasing safety tremendously if we put this in place. Also, there was a catastrophic accident where 2 people were killed. I believe it was the Englehart crossing, mother and a daughter. My understanding is that there were no repercussions to the town's insurance. Perhaps, Mr. CEO, you'd like to speak to that?
Mr. Serio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, in 2004, yes, the town was named in a lawsuit, but there was a whistle. So there was no liability on the part of the town. That's right now with the whistle blowing, the liability all falls on Metrolinx or the rail authority. It does not fall on the town. So in 2004, because there was a whistle, the liability fell fully on the on Metro or whoever it was at the time, the Railway Authority. And so initially, the town was named in the lawsuit because people don't know and they do sue the town. But as a result of the town not having any authority over it, the town was let out of the lawsuit. If we had a whistle cessation bylaw in effect at the time, then the town would not have been let out of the lawsuit.
Thank you. Can you comment on what I said about Transport Canada's parameters about the conductor of the train being required to sound the horn if they see, if they need to clear the tracks or they see a potential emergency?
Mr. Serio?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, the whistle, there would definitely be a clause in the bylaw that if there is an incident, the conductor would have to whistle and not whistle. But in my opinion, just human interactions, like if your first thought is not to whistle, when you then all of a sudden see something, your first thought is not going to be to whistle, and they may whistle too late. I know it may be a poor excuse. I'm just merely commenting on human behavior. And there has been case law that suggests that where there was, not Ontario, where there was whistle cessation bylaws in effect and the conductor did not whistle when he ought to have whistled because there was an incident occurring, he was then held negligence along with the rail authority and the municipality.
Councilor Gardner?
You could give us that case law, please, for the next meeting. You know, it's your opinion was interesting because it's a federal regulation that the conductor sound the horn. So I don't think if they, you know, they didn't think they had to, they didn't notice, they fell asleep. It doesn't matter. They hold a huge liability there. I think we need some more answers. I think we need to speak to Markham, what they meant when they said that if there was an accident, it would go through their insurance policy. Mr. Lustig, the treasurer there, was very happy to speak to me if I had any further questions. So I'm sure he would speak to staff. I think we need to, and also we need to look at probability here. I think to what Councillor Gilliland was saying, we have a duty to our residents, and it does speak to safety and to quality of life. And you know, there will be a whistleblowing every 7.5 minutes because trains will be passing each other. I did want to ask, this is about cost. What did the report mean when there needs to be increased cost if there are pedestrian facilities?
We'll take that, Mr. Ramuno.
Through your chair, Kim, I think table 2 identifies the additional costs for the if we're going to implement the ceasing of the train whistle, the additional maze barriers and pedestrian gates need to be installed at a cost of we've identified $500,000 for each crossing for the pedestrian gates and maze barriers. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Councilor Gardner?
I really wanted to know what it meant by if there are pedestrian facilities. That's what the report says.
Mr. Ramuno, can you clarify that?
So you, Chair Kim, if Councilor Gardner could just point to the page.
Okay, it's under the chart, and it is page 8, and it is there's 2 bullet points below the chart, and then it says based on recent discussion with the region, if there are pedestrian facilities in the area of the crossing, pedestrian gates are required.
And again, Anka can jump in here, but I think that's just referencing if we are to implement those pedestrian gates and maze barriers at $500,000 each, that is the additional cost. But Anka, you can jump in if I've misspoke.
Ms. Mahale?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's correct. So in the previous report that we presented on April 19, we identified as safety controls on municipal roads, maze barriers only. After discussion with the region and with City of Markham, we realized the region pointed out the fact that if there are pedestrian facilities, we are referring to sidewalks, we need pedestrian gates. So these pedestrian gates are a lot more expensive than maze barriers. So for St. John's Side Road, there are sidewalks on each side of the road. So we need 4 pedestrian gates. This will be paid by the region. On municipal roads, Center and Engelhard, there is 1 sidewalk on one side of the road. So we need just 2 pedestrian gates. So that's the reason we put it in there, because we increase the cost for safety controls on municipal roads, given the fact that we realized we have to have pedestrian gates at the sidewalks. However, this is just an estimate. There will be a safety assessment done with Transport Canada and with a consultant that is agreed by Transport Canada. And if council approves the project, we'll look at each location and we'll see what we have to implement. But from what the region and City of Markham told us, we need to have maze barriers and pedestrian gates at each location.
Thank you, Ms. Mahale. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Ms. Mahal. Going back to that, I think you were here. I don't know when you came, Ms. Mahal, but in the reports starting, I don't know, maybe it was I'm not sure what the date was. It's been so long, but in 2004, a comprehensive safety assessment was done for Aurora. And I believe it was updated in 2006, possibly also in 2008. And it was done and it cost us $160,000. It was done by AECOM, which is also the third-party consultant for Metrolinx. So considering that extensive work was done there, would it be possible, or could you find out if it'd be possible to update it at a lesser cost? I mean, physically things are the same, and it was a very, obviously if they work with Metrolinx, it's a consultant who knows what they're doing. Do you have a comment, or could you find out if there would be a price break there?
Ms. Mahale?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I looked into it. So in 2009, we hired AECOM and we have done a safety assessment of each location on municipal roads, including the regional road, St. John's Side Road. Based on this assessment, we implemented pavement markings and traffic signs. Also, they recommended maze barriers and pedestrian gates. Given the high cost of these controls, we haven't implemented them at that time. So in 2011, the project was canceled by council. And then we looked into it with the region and City of Markham, and they told us that given that there is so much time, more than 10 years, 11 years since we canceled the project, we have to start from scratch. We have to look at each location again and assess it with Transport Canada for safety. So we have to start from the beginning. But there are some controls implemented there already. The most expensive, which are maze barriers and pedestrian gates, are not yet implemented.
Councilor Gardner?
Thank you. I'll send you the timeline, Ms. Mahal, because I believe that ACOM, although it was called something else at the time and then became ACON or was bought out by ACOM, I believe that safety assessment was done in 2004, the original one. So that's even longer. Thank you for looking into that. That's really too bad because a large amount of work has already been done. That would just be repeated. I think that's all I have to say for now, except for the fact that Markham seems to be very willing to speak to us. It does say in the report that staff tried and didn't hear back from Markham. So according to what Ms. DeSerio said, that's inaccurate in the report. But I think we need to look into this more. We need to, I mean, Markham has basically written the book on how to do this. And it would be very wise of us to, I mean, there is so much information on the website, but we could speak to the mayor's office and or Mr. Lustig and get some more information. I think we need to explore everything possible because I agree with Councillor Gilland. This is, of course, we don't want to put our taxpayers at increased liability. And if we can avoid that, we certainly would want to help the residents who live by the tracks. And I mean, you know, okay, people bought homes by the tracks, but in those days, it certainly wasn't anticipated that it would be this frequency. Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I don't know if there's much more to say. Thank you, Councillor Gartner, for that in-depth questions. I guess I'll just kind of circle up just by commenting that I think the motion before us or the recommendation before us is focusing on the regional roads at this time. So really the only one in question is Englehart. After the fact, after today, if we pass this and it has a resolution, given the fact that Center Street in Wellington will have no cessation just based on at a default and the way it's going to be reconstructed, I'm really happy to hear that. So I understand that. And the liability would be assumed for St. John Side Road. So I'm happy with what's before us today. I think we should continue on with investigating, you know, for Englehart down the road. There's some examples, worst case scenarios. And my only comment to that is, you know, if there was a station, there would be maze barriers and gates, and that person probably would not have been walking across the road. So I think that there is a reason why there is a rigorous process involved with Transport Canada to avoid these situations happening. And with all the research that I did by reading online with Markham and the process that they had taken a lot of years, a few of the articles that I had read and comments made by the mayor at that time was that it was a rigorous process with them to ensure that safety. Currently, right now, I don't have a very large scale complaint basis for the Englehart one, to be quite honest. I would say 90% of them are related to Center Street, Wellington, and St. John's. So it would be interesting to see if we can alleviate these three for sure, if this is what happens tonight, that improvement in quality and life in our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, at the end of the day, it does become, you know, a local liable issue for the town, and it is a budget issue. Absolutely something needs to be looked at to allow the, you know, the areas where there's lots of residential around, that there's some improvement for their quality of life. The whistles are only going to, or the horn, I should say, the horn should only get worse as things begin to escalate, but it's just taking on the liability. I mean, you know, I'm just reading Markham's process, as Councillor Gillen mentioned. Each crossing is about over $500,000, and that was in 2020. I'm sure that's even more. So this is a complete, you know, budget discussion and understanding all the different, and that includes all the different safety measures. I mean, extra safety around the crossings as discussed, lights, flashing lights, lots of things have been added to try to compensate for the citation of the whistle. So it's tough, but in an article, just reading an article here that I was just Googling things as we were talking, and it does say that the smaller towns and communities do have a difficult struggle because of the capital funding. It's very difficult, like some of our municipal partners around our municipality here. It's just sometimes it's just the bottom line is affordability. So we need to look at this and maybe raising it up to the region and to the province to see how they can help us. Because I mean, we could do these two, maybe areas or one, but when you look at it all, it could, you know, maybe a full view approach. But anyway, we'll see how this goes by the time our next meeting comes into effect. Thanks.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Just listening in and a whole bunch of things comes to mind, and I think if we step back and particularly regarding liability, and this may seem odd, but you know, I thought about dangerous situations in town where someone could die. We drive cars, each and every intersection in the town of Aurora, that could happen. We don't put up bars and you know, to try to stop that. We don't blow whistles to try to stop that. Is there an additional, you know, issue with trains? I bet if we did some research that they're far safer than motor vehicle accidents, yet we accept liability. Let's say if you know, a light is out and someone, you know, inadvertently goes through there, you know, do we accept liability? There's so many of those situations where we've accepted liability where there's danger involved. Nobody is saying, you know, let's leave those streets wide open and get rid of train whistles. Nobody is saying that. We implement the best possible way to alert those people crossing there that there's a potential danger, and nobody would do otherwise. It would be ridiculous. At the same way, there's no one who would mandate a conductor to blow a whistle if they think there's something going to go wrong. Blow your whistle, and nobody should be telling them not to if there's some type of danger there. I would, if each municipality is doing this, I'd hate to be a conductor because I'd have to figure out when I'm going from Barrie to Union where I can and where I can't blow a whistle within kilometers of each other. I don't know how they're going to figure that out. Going through Markham, they don't. Then they head to Richmond Hill, and to me, it's confusing. Maybe it should have been a provincial matter. I don't know, but my preference would have been also to deal with Englehart. That way, the whole town is dealt with. If we want to do this somewhat piecemeal, we're going to have to wait to really find out what's happening at Center as well. I think Wellington is pretty much a done deal, and we're dealing with St. John's. So I'm okay with moving forward. I think if some more information comes down and costing, I'd entertain Englehart as well.
Councillor Gardner for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My research is, and I would appreciate if staff would check it, that in communities that have instituted the anti-horn policies, that there are no increased accidents, that in fact, they may even be safer. I think that we definitely need to speak with Markham, have a fulsome conversation. I also would like to go ahead with a safety audit, a new safety audit, and see what's what with that. Yeah, I'm not sure why we're not dealing with Englehart tonight. if I was the region, I wouldn't want to put in the cost and liability, take on the liability if the town wasn't willing to also make their crossings safer. Why would I do it if the town is not interested in doing the same thing? So I think that needs to be explored further. Maybe the region wouldn't be interested if we're not. To me, it's well, it doesn't speak well of us that we don't want to at least increase the safety. So speaking to that point, there are some things that, again, staff could speak to Metrolinx about. The first thing is there are some heavy-handed whistle train horn blowers. And there must be a policy with Metrolinx about when and how long these horns can be sounded. Also, you know, I did my research with people who use the GO train, and frankly, apart from rush hours, the trains aren't that busy. And I've done several weekend trips up to Barrie. The car is almost empty. So one of the residents said it was so lovely over the long weekend to have some peace and quiet. If the trains are running empty or almost empty, then perhaps the schedule could change so that there weren't so many trains. I'd like to have that discussion with Metrolinx. I may try and get in touch with them myself, but I would appreciate if staff would do that work. The whole idea is to help our residents and increase the safety of our pedestrians. So we need to do everything that we can to try and figure this out. And I would like to begin with a safety audit, but definitely speaking with Markham would be imperative. And also through you to Mr. Serio. Mr. Serio has, do we have anything in writing from the insurance company about this?
Mr. Serio?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. I would have to look into that.
Councilor Gardner?
This was all verbal information that you received from the our insurance company?
Mr. Serio?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. I wasn't the one who spoke to the insurance company who wrote to the insurance company. So it's something my team did. So I would have to look into it.
Councilor Gardner?
Well, if there isn't a written record of what the insurance company said, you know, especially speaking to what's in the report, then I think that's definitely important for council to have. So could you make sure that's provided to us? Thank you.
Mayor Maracus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, like I said it the last time this was in front of us, and I think I've said it every time it's been in front of us. If the liability remains, I'm not in favor of moving forward and putting the town in that position and our residents and our taxpayers. But if it is about safety, if we're going to talk about safety, I by all means, I have no problem us looking at adding this to the 2023 budget and putting in pedestrian crossings over on Englehart in anticipation that the possibility that the province or Metrolinx will continue to hold liability. And then at that time, we could move forward with whistle cessation. But if it's about safety, then let's go ahead and let's move forward and put those added measures, safety measures in place for our residents. I think all of us agree that we want to do what's in the best interest of our community to make sure that our residents remain safe at all times. So let's do that if that's what this is about. But by no means am I willing to put the municipality in harm's way and increasing the liability in this case when we know that it's going to increase our liability. The liability is going to fall on us directly. We've seen time, we've heard from our solicitor. And you know what? And everyone's talking about Markham. Well, Markham, the reason their insurance is covering it is because they're taking liability. Your insurance is not going to cover it if you don't have the liability. It's that simple. So I'm not willing to do that, but if we are going to talk about safety and we want to have that conversation, and if we want to do that, come council, I'd suggest everyone have some added conversations with staff, with our solicitor. If we want to add that as an amendment to look at just putting in place on Engelhard the pedestrian gates or mazes, whichever one we want to do, to add that added safety measure for our residents and our community, absolutely. Let's do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there's no further comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Okay. There are no notices of motions. No regional reports, and we go to new business. I'll start at the audience with Councillor Thompson. No. Councillor Gardner? New business? No. Councillor Gilliland, new business. Okay. Councillor Humphreys? Mr. Mayor? Councillor Gallo? Okay, and then we'll go to public service announcements. Again, I'll go to the remote. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Gardner? Councillor Gilliland? Public service announcements? Councillor Humphreys?
Through Mr. Chair, I just wanted to remind everyone, this is opening weekend for the farmers market. So we're back on this Saturday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's don't miss it. We're all looking forward to a wonderful day. And we're still, it'll be a lot less restrictive this year as the province is let up on masks and so on. You absolutely feel free. If you want to wear a mask, please do so, but it's not mandatory. And looking forward to everyone coming out. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Mayor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just add the same day on the 7th, after you go to the farmer's market, if you're looking at doing something with the whole family, I would suggest that you head on over to the SARC. We're starting our movies in the park and we're actually taking it indoors into the SARC. And if anyone's ever been to one, we had it before the pandemic. It's quite fun inside the SARC, the big screen that we all know and love that we see at the park when we have the movies there. It will be there. There'll be lots of games and stuff starting at 5 p.m. and then 6 p.m. the movie will start. And if anyone wants more information, they can visit aurora.ca/movies in the park. There was a misprint in the 2022 waste management guide for the week of May 8th. You can put out your green bins, blue bins, and yard waste. And the week of May 15, you can put out your green bins, blue bins, and garbage. And anyone, obviously, you can visit aurora.ca/waste and recycling for more information. And I guess I know this is PSAs, Mr. Chair, but can I just ask on this one? Are we going to get that information out to the area? Thank you. And I know everyone's in a bit of a rush, so I'm going to go through. Burlap is still being given away at the Joint Operations Center. Mr. Downey, we're not out yet, are we? Do you know? Sorry.
Mr. Downey?
I don't want to give false information.
I appreciate that. No, we gave it 500 on the weekend, and there's a big yellow bin out in front of the Joint Operations Center. You just drive up and help yourself.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Chair, residents can register by May 19th to participate in Cycle Aurora from June 1st to July 1st. Cycle through a series of challenges and compete to win prizes as you travel through Aurora, exploring beautiful trails and the outdoors. And for more information on that, you can visit aurora.ca/Cycle Aurora. And if you enjoy singing, acting, or dancing, then there is the Performing Arts Festival is for you. Group categories are 7 and under, 8 to 12 years, and 13 to 17 years old can compete amongst their peers within each age range, either in singing, acting, or dancing. And the deadline to register is June 1st, 2022. And everyone can visit aurora.ca/arts festival for more information. As well, on June 4th, join us in the town park for greetings by the town crier, then taken an incredible performance by the Aurora Community Band while enjoying complimentary scones with jam and the Queen's favorite Earl Grey tea during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I got a feeling former councillor Jeff Tom might show up for that one. If for more information, visit aurora.ca/platinum jubilee. And it's time to book summer camps for your kids. And for full details and program guide information, please visit aurora.ca/summer camps. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gallo?
Eid al-Fitr means festival of breaking the fast and marks the end of holy month of Ramadan. Muslims around the world are celebrating the 3-day Eid al-Fitr festival, which marks the end of fasting of the month of Ramadan, which I believe was yesterday. So to all our Muslim friends and residents, we celebrate with them.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. So we did our closed session items, so we have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Gillen, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you very much.